Welcome to this Autism Ontario webinar, an autism-informed approach to mindfulness. My name is Matthew Lay, and as always, I will be your host, guiding you through today's conversation. And today we are very lucky to be joined by Sue Hutton for an engaging session combining new accessible mindfulness practices and self-care and the sharing of how to make this practical for caregivers with Lee Steele. In this session, you will learn all about mindfulness as a tool for the autism community. Sue will lead us through practical mindfulness practices. So we're going to do some actual sessions, some mindfulness walkthroughs, which I'm very excited about, as well as for autistic adults, and share information about how the tools can help us in our daily lives as caregivers. So throughout the presentation, use the button right below me to submit your questions in the Q&A. I'm going to be watching for those, and part of my job is to get you answers. Speaking of answers, we've got a slide presentation to guide us through, but we've got a jam-packed resources section today. And that handout section is right below the slides and is full of links and documents and stuff to help inform our conversation. And last but not least, if you have any issues, click on the help button and someone from our team will be there to assist you. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get into why we're here to talk today. And let me welcome to the stage, Sue Hutton. Thanks for coming today, Sue.
It is my pleasure. I didn't even have to leave my home.
Well, that is the blessing and the curse of what it is that we're going through now. I would have loved to welcome you into our studio downstairs, but for now we have to do this all remotely. And it looks like are you in a forest right now, or?
Okay, full disclosure, this is a wall hanging. It's not even a virtual background, wall hanging.
Well, that's why it looks so good. As a guy who does this for a living, not a huge fan of the virtual backgrounds myself. Sue, I'm going to ask you some broad questions. I always do, give you a chance to really introduce yourself. But, why are you here today? Why are we talking about this?
It's a great question. I love that. Why am I here? Why am I doing this mindfulness thing? I was lucky that I was really young when I first got introduced to it. I was 16 when I first stumbled into it. And then I was 20 when I did my first 10-day silent meditation retreat. And I'll let you know how old I am. That was in 1985. So
that does not add up, Sue, but I'll let you continue with your intro.
I wasn't 2 years old when I did it. But so I was sold right off the bat that this was a really powerful tool. I was working with developmental services. I then became a social worker, and I was working with families, individuals with neurodevelopmental disabilities. So I was doing these things separately, doing my mindfulness practice and my developmental services work, because back then there weren't conversations happening between them. I did the training with John Kabat-Zinn in mid-2000s to deliver mindfulness, started teaching mindfulness in the cancer community, other communities. Then I met Dr. Yona Lunsky, who asked me to become involved with the CAMH research they were launching on mindfulness. And the autism community taught me more about teaching mindfulness than any of those years that I spent practicing. It's been an incredible, incredible journey. So that's a little tiny bit about me.
It's funny, in 1985, when you were 2 and you took that course, mindfulness is something that has entered, I think, the lexicon of our day-to-day lives. I would have thought in the aughts, not back in 1985. It's interesting that there's this long of a history in it. Excited to get into that. It's funny. It's not funny, but it's interesting that you say how much you learn in the autism community. I've learned more about parenting doing these webinars than anywhere else in my life. So it's a very interesting community for sure. Now, with that, we have someone else on the stage, and I'm going to welcome Lee up now. Lee, you're a caregiver. We heard in the intro some of the stuff that you're going to be doing, but I want to ask you the same broad question. Why are you here, and why mindfulness for caregivers?
Well, thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, I attended Sue's first workshop in 2014, but prior to that, I had also taken a workshop on mindfulness stress reduction, and I was so stressed at the time that they used to do body scans, which would, you started at your toes and you'd work up to your head, top of your head. And I would fall asleep by my ankles, like within the first 3 minutes. I was so stressed I would fall asleep. So when Sue and the group did this research at CAMH, I was so grateful because there was all of these accessible, easy to use methods I could incorporate into my own life as a caregiver. I feel that why mindfulness for caregivers? Because we all can benefit from mindfulness, but I found, at least for myself, that when I was really like a cup that was empty. I was just drained right to the bottom, and I needed something to fill myself up, and I didn't know how. So I was hard on myself and hard to live with. I'm pretty sure with my son, who is 30 years old now and lives on, has on the autism spectrum. And I also am really lucky. I get to be the family advisor at the Israeli Center with Sue. And I've been working with families for the last 17 years.
Wow. When we talked about practical experience, I didn't know it was going to be just that practical. I mean, this is truly lived experience. You have a video for us, right? You have something that you wanted us to play to get this started. Do you mind introing that for me? And then we'll get it kicked off.
Thanks, Matt. Yes. So Sumit was mentioning a second ago how, working with individuals, neurodiversity of autism really informed and helped us think about this program even more. And so we really wanted to include the voice of our autistic advisor, Daniel Scherstrom. So that's what this video is about.
Okay. Well, we'll have a moment and we will show that video right now.
Hi, I'm Daniel Scherstrom, a writer, social work student, and motivational speaker on the autism spectrum. I advise on the development of the mindfulness course that you're about to take. Mindfulness calms the storm inside for a little while. When you're on the spectrum, there's so much that can cause anxiety or depression, and it's so nice to have a tool like mindfulness to help clear the mind. You get stuck on things when you're anxious or depressed, like when something hurts your feelings or when you experience something traumatic. We just kind of loop on it a lot. Mindfulness is an amazing tool to help get the train back on the rails after it crashes. I've gone through all kinds of therapists and medications for anxiety, and none of it really helped very much. Mindfulness is the first thing that ever worked for me. I do it whenever I feel like I really need it, and it just works. My favorite technique is the body scan. It's the one that helps me the most, but the great thing is that if that doesn't work for you, you're going to learn about a lot of other methods of managing your mental health through this program. Please enjoy. I hope this program can help you, and thank you very much.
So, an advisor to the program? Give the gentleman we just heard from just a little bit more information so we understand, where he comes into the fold here.
Do you want me to jump in on this one, Lee?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So Daniel he's amazing. He's got a TED Talk out there about being autistic. I don't know how many thousands of views it has. It's fantastic. And Daniel worked for a period of time with CAMH. He's now involved in some other really exciting jobs, all autism related. But Daniel did the program with us, and he would sit in on groups with me and help modify the exercises, right? So, there's all these typical mindfulness exercises. Some of you in the audience may have tried some of them, and you might think, that doesn't work for me. I'm not feeling it. And Daniel would sit and say, okay, as an autistic person, that doesn't work. Like, stop ringing the darn bell, right? It's really classic that with mindfulness, there's this bell at the beginning and end, that for a lot of autistic meditators, that is a huge trigger. It actually hurts a lot of people to hear that dumb bell. Drop the bell, right? But Daniel would have all kinds of other recommendations about how to make it more accessible. So the tools that we've developed, we've got a whole curriculum, a 6-week curriculum that Daniel helped us develop. It's got all modified mindfulness exercises specifically for autistic adults. And we've had lots of other autistic adults sit in and help give us feedback to modify this to be more accessible.
Well, you mentioned the bell and saying that many of us will know what that means. I, for one, don't know what the bell means. And so what we decided would be important as we go in here is to get an understanding of our audience, understand, where your levels are as it relates to your knowledge of mindfulness. And first off, though, we're looking to understand who our audience is. So I've launched a poll. I'm going to make it very large for everyone so that you can see it. And I would just ask that everybody click on the answer here, whether you are an autistic adult, caregivers or family, or a helping professional. As the tallies rise, I see we do have quite the diverse group. We'll give a few more moments with all of this before we move on to our second one. Okay. A lot of caregivers, guys. A lot of caregivers on with us today. All right. Excellent. Very, very interesting. Okay. I got one more poll. Oh, still growing, still caregivers in the lead, but we got a good representation of our group. Now I'm going to change it. I'm going to find out, how much everyone here knows about mindfulness. And so let's launch the second poll, same as the first. Click on the one that applies to you. Basically, what is your mindfulness experience? It's all new to me. So you're kind of like me, and you don't know what the bell is. It's a little, you've tried a couple times. You've done a few courses, or lots. You meditate all the time. Okay, so as our numbers grow here, I'm seeing that we got some experience here. I think, ladies, on with us. Most people have tried this a couple times. We have a few that this is brand new to, and I feel like I might be with you guys. So don't worry about that. And yeah, so. Interesting group, but most people do have an introduction to it. And speaking of introduction, Sue, now that you've got that, I'm going to ask you to take us through, what we're going to be doing today. What are the items, the agenda, if you will? What are we going to be talking through?
You got it. And today we are basically going to talk, obviously, about making mindfulness accessible. We've got all kinds of amazing information from our research we'll talk about. We'll do some accessible mindfulness practices. So those of you like Matt who haven't done it before very much, we'll give you a taste. Those of you, we see that there's quite a few of you with lots of experience. You can see how we're modifying this for neurodiversity compared to your normal mindfulness practices. And we'll tell you a little bit about the research we're doing. And as Matt said before, there will be opportunity for questions and answers. We're really interested in hearing from you too.
Excellent. Reminder, you submit those questions right down below, and we'll be taking some breaks throughout or at the end to get you your answers. All right. So as I've admitted, I am a novice, Sue, and I am one of those people. So now you're going to take us through our first guided mindfulness exercise. So I'm going to leave that to you, and I'm going to participate like everybody else.
That is the best thing in the world. And, the beauty of it, Matt, and for any of you who are doing this for the first time, even though maybe I've been doing this 34, coming on 35 years, Lee's done this for a whole long time too. Regardless if we've done it for a long time or we're doing it for a very first time, we're all in the exact same present moment. So let's do a little exercise here. Now, if you're sighted, you will notice that there's a slide with an image of an airplane landing. Now, the reason that I love that image of the airplane landing, we had a caregiver do one of our 6-week mindfulness programs at CAMH, and I loved what she said. Lee and I talked about this, and Lee said, what a great image. She said, you know what? Being a caregiver is kind of like getting on an airplane. She said, you know, you got your bags all packed and you're all stressed out. You've got everything ready. You take your seat, you put your seatbelt on, and then all you can do is enjoy the ride, right? Be present. There's nothing that you can change about the experience of being in that airplane and flying to Vancouver or New York, wherever you're going. It's just being present, right? So let's do a little bit of an exercise right now. What I'd like to start off with, I'm going to show you two different short exercises that we do with a lot of our autistic adults, but they're great for caregivers, helping professionals too. We're going to do one right now called the 3 S's. You will get this in your handout. If maybe Matt can show you later, you'll have access to this. So the 3 S's: sight, sound, sensation. Okay, sight, sound, sensation. The reason that we look at 3 different sense anchors is honoring neurodiversity. Everyone's going to connect with a different sense anchor to help them come into the present moment. So I'd like you to start off right now by just getting into a position that'll help you fully concentrate and just come into the present moment. So that might mean moving your posture a little bit. It might mean extending, lengthening your spine so you're sitting a little bit more upright, and just become aware of your body sitting here now. Okay, are your feet on the floor? Can you actually feel the sensations of the floor? Can you feel yourself relaxing, being supported by the chair that you're in? Just take a breath, feel the belly expand out, and then just let the body relax on the out breath a little bit. We'll do some more exercises like that shortly. But what I want you to do right now is engage in this 3 S's meditation. So what I'd like you to start with is the first S, sight. Now, if you're not sighted, just stick with feeling the belly, breathing, the belly expanding out and in. If you are sighted, what I'd like you to do, keep your eyes open. Now, move your eyes, look at an object in your room. I'd like you to choose one object, and I would like you to focus all of your attention on that. So feel yourself becoming still, relax the body. Now observe that object and observe the color, the shape, the texture, the way the light falls on that. Just take a breath. So you're focusing all your attention with vision, with sight. Taking a deep breath in, allowing yourself to remain focused on simply engaging the sense of sight. And can you feel inside your body what it feels like to just receive vision, receive sight? Now take a look at one more object. Turn, look at another object in your room. Now, same thing. Bring all your focused attention to that. Take a look at the shape, the color, the texture. Take a breath in, feel the body relaxing, engaging with the sense of sight. And now moving to one more object. Allow your eyes to focus on that. Feeling yourself relaxing, breathing in. Observing the shape, texture, color. Now what I'd like you to do is, if you had your eyes open, close your eyes. We're going to move to sound. I'd like you right now to focus all of your attention on the sound that you hear in your room. Now, I'll be quiet for a moment. There may be silence. And if that's the case, just observe the silence. Or if there's a sound, it might be a car outside. There might be someone moving in another area of the building you're in. Just observe sound without labeling it. Just take note of the sound. And now taking a deep breath in. Now, remaining with your eyes closed, if you have them closed, I'd like you now to turn to the third S, sensation. Just become aware of what sensation in your body is most obvious to you right here, right now. What do you feel? It might even be the pressure of your buttocks or your body seated, being supported by the chair, the couch, whatever you're seated on. You may even feel sensations of the air in the room on your face. You might even feel tingling. There may even be discomfort somewhere in the body. Just take a moment, fully tuning into sensation right here, right now in the body. And then closing that off with just bringing full attention to how the breath moves in the body. Can you take a nice deep breath in? The deeper you can breathe in and allow the belly to expand, the more relaxing signals you send to your brain. Can you take a few breaths in, and on each exhalation, just feel the body getting heavier, befriend gravity, just relax, let go of anything you can let go of. There, that's a very brief little introduction, and we'll send that to you. The 3 S's is a practice. Again, it engages multiple senses, and that was developed directly with one of the autistic participants in one of our 6-week programs.
That's interesting. Very, very interesting to be through. So I've been through similar. So even though I don't know the bell, I have gone through similar exercises in the past. But I think that it's important, now that we've been through it, so we have a feel for it, that we talk about, the actual definition. What is mindfulness? What are we talking about when we throw that term around, whether it be within professional practice or in our daily lives?
It's such a good question, and I have to start that my answer with saying it's really sad that it's being so misrepresented right now. I think there's people who have done very short little introductory mindfulness programs, and they run out and start teaching it without really having a grasp of what it is, and it's getting quite misrepresented to the point where people are not always informed about what mindfulness really is. What you just did there in that brief 3 S's meditation was you focused all of your awareness in the present moment on an object, right? Sight, sound, sensation. By doing that, you were not allowing thoughts to take over, right? Of course, it's very natural. The mind drips thoughts like a leaky tap drips water, right? It's part of the human experience. So if you had thoughts, you're completely normal and congratulate yourself for being human. But when you focus awareness on things like sound or sight or sensation, there's lots of different sense anchors. You're not allowing, or you're giving your attention something else to hang its hat on. So you're focusing your attention while you're busy listening to sound. You may notice, there's no thoughts bombarding me because I'm focused on sound, right? So we use different sense anchors to come into the present moment. Mindfulness is really a path, right? It's not just a tool that you just do and it's like a pill you take, everything changes. We have to rewire our brain regularly to develop those neural connections in the brain to be in that space where we can self-regulate easily. So some of the terms that we use, it's a path of present moment awareness. You can use sound. We've got techniques that, we'll give you the links for. Ocean breathing. You can use sound. You can actually breathe so loud that you can hear it. And we'll try that a little later. Thought watching, observing thoughts for caregivers. And Lee will talk about this later. So often we're worried that we did something in the past that may have not been a good parenting or caregiving choice. Helping professionals think this also in autistic adults, as Daniel said, loop on thoughts. We all loop on thoughts, right? So thought watching, really important. We have some movement exercises we'll show you later. Tons of different ways of coming to the present moment with mindfulness. So there's a little bit of a look at it, Matt.
Sounded pretty comprehensive to me. And it's interesting about the misrepresentation because I wasn't going to ask it, but definitely something that is, the term has been hijacked quite a bit. We have a couple questions that I would like to get to. First, there's one that I can answer. The handout that we were referring to on the 3 S's, that's available in the handout. So that's kind of below us, but below the slides over there. I'm going to expand it so you guys can just see how full the handouts are today. Always excited when we got a lot of stuff that we can offer you. So you can go ahead and grab it there, or when we're done, go through the handouts before you leave, where you can access a whole bunch of that stuff. So one of our caregivers on the line here has asked about the techniques that we're learning today, the mindfulness techniques. We mentioned that they, have been worked on in groups with adults on the spectrum. Are these things that you believe can be worked with children on the spectrum?
100%. 100%. And great question. Yes. And we do have kids. Now, the reason that we're saying adults is because largely our research groups, you know how with research, you got to be really narrow and you have to have a very specific outline of what population you're working with. So our groups are done with adults. However, we do lots of this, and outside of the research at CAMH, I've done lots of work in the school system with children. And yeah, these exercises are all great for kids, right? It's about getting buy-in. It's about finding something that the person, the kid or the adult, connects with. So with kids, it's really finding how to bring mindful attention, like giving that focused anchor of bringing our attention to one place so we're not being bombarded with thoughts. The reason we want to do that, by the way, is because we know from research that extensive thinking around, like rumination around things that make us depressed, things that make us worried, those excessive thoughts, that gerbil wheel, we know from research, excessive rumination leads to anxiety and depression. That's why we want to train the mind to be able to come and just hang on one object and relax and come to the present moment through that.
Okay, you mentioned research, and with that, I'm gonna bring Lee in. But before Lee, I turn it over to you. We have a question here. It's very specific, and if you're going to get to it later, feel free to just put it off until later in the presentation. But the question is about a very specific worry and the role that mindfulness could play within this specific worry, and that is worrying about the future. Like that big thing that is in front of us. Is that something that you guys have seen often? Do you have any suggestions around mindfulness techniques to address that specific anxiety?
Lee, you speak so beautifully about thoughts and the power of coming to the present moment. Do you want to speak to this one?
Sure.
I'm happy to also, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you add in, Sue. Yeah, that's such a great question. I mean, I found through the pandemic, it was even my worries and concerns about the future were even more exaggerated. And I saw that in my loved one as well, that we were constantly in a state of like being, reassuring myself, but also reassuring him about the future. And when the future is so uncertain and the news was constantly changing, that it was hard to give that reassurance. So that's where I found my mindfulness practice to be so incredibly helpful, because I'm like all of our brains, we're, in the past thinking, I wish I had handled that differently. I wish I could have said that differently, whatever. Or I'm in the future thinking, gee, what's going to happen if I'm no longer here? What's going to, as a caregiver, I certainly worry about that at times. Or just, what is my loved one's mental health going to be like if this pandemic continues and I can't get the supports I need, etc. So for me, I love the idea that mindfulness of bringing my attention to this moment. In this moment, I'm actually safe. In this moment, I can actually make a decision. If I'm not fused with some fear about what's going to happen, I can actually free myself up to be present in this moment. And I have an idea in my mind, a metaphor that I like, which is like a beach ball. I can, if I'm using all my energy to submerge the beach ball underwater, then I can't use my hands for what really is important to me, that metaphor. And what would it be like instead of like thinking I've got to, manage these thoughts or control them in some way? What about if I just allowed them to be? What if I just in this moment said to myself, I'm okay in this moment, and I can make a decision based on my values in this moment versus being all afraid in a future moment that hasn't even happened yet. And so, yeah, that I kind of let the ball go, and it's going to bob around in the pool with me. It's going to bump into me every once in a while and frighten me again and go, oh, thoughts of the future. It just keeps happening. And I think that's the human condition. But what if then I just bring my attention to this moment, make decisions in this moment? This is the moment I really only have to make a change. Does that make sense, Sue? Maybe you can help add to that.
How could I possibly add to that? I love the beach ball. And then because with Lee's image of the beach ball, what, the other piece that Lee normally says is, then when it suddenly escapes, it jumps up and you can't control where it goes, right? But the only thing I would add is that, with the mindfulness techniques, a thought is a thought is a thought, right? So some people say, but what if I want to just spend my time thinking about really positive thoughts, just focusing on positive thoughts? There are techniques where we actually do focus on particular images and thoughts to help wire the brain to get into that headspace and to know what it feels like. But really, the big technique is just developing a different relationship with our thoughts, right? Even developing a relationship with anxiety. It's like, okay, here's what anxiety feels like, right? Got that butterfly in the belly feeling, and it's pretty intense. Got the heart pounding feeling, and that's pretty intense. And then, like Lee was saying, just reminding ourselves, I'm okay right now. I feel safe. I'm here in the present moment. Again, we're doing a whirlwind tour of this. There's so many more nuances to the techniques with mindfulness. Like I said, it's a path. It's not just a quick pill, but I think Lee put that beautifully.
Well, I appreciate you answering it, because I do understand that there's more to that. But our audience so often comes here because they're looking for answers. So it's great when we can give them practical information like that. Okay, Lee, let's talk a bit about the research and how it began, and just a little background there, if you don't mind.
Sure. Very quickly, in 2014, Dr. Lunsky and Sue brought this idea of bringing mindfulness to caregivers. And as you can see in this picture, we were together in person then. And it was, as I said earlier, a number of techniques that I could use and implement. And it really caught my attention that even just within 6 weeks, how a difference it was making by implementing some of the strategies. And we'll talk about some of those, but just bringing my attention to my everyday activities that I was doing anyway, but just doing it really mindfully in this moment. And also just noticing, okay, this is a thought, not a fact. I really needed to learn that because I was reacting to all my thoughts, thinking as if they were all truth. So the research, being in this group was really, really helpful. And I was lucky to be in this very first group. And then we did a number of these in-person sessions. And then with the pandemic, we moved to virtual studying these 6-week mindfulness groups virtually. And then we extended it even to using the same kind of format. And as Sue mentioned earlier, having autistic advisors help us refine those groups. But it turned out that moving to a virtual format was really helpful because we didn't have to worry about childcare or transportation. We could just, find a quiet space to join the group. So I think, caregivers have all talked about the benefits of mindfulness for us. And, we always think about the strategies that we can learn to help our loved one and how unique it was and how really affirming it was for me to learn strategies to support my own well-being.
Yeah, that is so important. And interesting you said about how you mentioned no childcare, but what we've heard on a number of sessions is that being on a Zoom or a virtual session, being at home in the place where someone feels the most comfortable is in their home, generally speaking, has helped in many remote therapy environments and a number of other things. Do you mind diving a little bit into the research itself and some of the findings, just to let the audience know, other than the stuff you personally learned, what was learned from the overall experience?
Sure, and I'll get Sue to jump into. So it started off just with the workshops for families, for caregivers, and then noticing the benefits from that. It moved to groups with autistic adults and autistic advisors, and then there was special funding for a group for autistic women, which is, such a unique opportunity to bring women on the spectrum together. And then there was a dyad, which was actually really interesting, where autistic adults and their caregivers could meet together and learn the strategies together. And then there was this other additional special group with Special Olympics. So Sue, maybe you could just speak to a moment about what you learned in terms of the research part of the benefits.
Yeah. And like Lee said, it kept growing, right? So it started off with that group that Lee was in 2014. And geez, it's amazing how time flies, but I can't believe it was that long ago. But some of the big takeaways, I know there's a lot of caregivers in the room right now. That very first group that Lee was in, I was so happy because look at where Lee is. Now we're comrades in arms on this mindfulness journey, but Lee was randomized into the mindfulness group. Half of the parents were randomized into an information and support group. So that research study was a randomized control trial, taking a look at the benefits of mindfulness. And that control group, the folks doing the information and support, their depression went up a little tiny bit. And the parents who were in the group that Lee was in, depression was found to go down a little bit. So generally, well-being improved with the mindfulness group, and it did not improve with our control group. We've got so much more research to do; it just keeps growing and continuing.
That is some powerful information for sure, and I would imagine that would have been the answer. I got a quick question I'm going to answer for the audience. People are asking if they have to download the resources while this is going on. No, you don't. Just wait until wait until the end, and you'll be able to access them. You don't have to worry about that. We'll always make sure that you're available, and you'll be able to come back to this link later on today, rewatch it, and download the resources as well. Now, because I don't understand the content as much as you guys do, has this slide been spoken to already, Sue? Have you already gone down?
Nope, it hasn't. And this one, so again, it keeps growing and growing. And because what we're doing is so unique in the world of mindfulness, like just outside of the autism community too, like mindfulness teachers around the world are saying, wow, tell us about what you're doing and what you're learning. So more and more staff are getting interested in learning about this. I did a talk with a mindfulness school. There's a university training mindfulness teachers in the UK. And they're all saying, what are you guys learning over there at CAMH? Please teach us. So staff are very interested in learning. And we've also, we're starting to build capacity in the clinical staff, not only with our research team, but the CAMH clinical staff. So there's a group of them very interested in bringing the tools that we're developing in our research over to a broader population. So, and now we're doing a lot for developmental services staff too, who are going through such a rough time with the pandemic. So we're opening this up. We've got some groups coming up. If any of you helping professionals out there right now are working in developmental services in any way, and you're interested in doing some mindfulness programs, we've got stuff coming up. So like Matt said, check the links and also, just email us. So happy to give the emails, and then we'll share the information.
Excellent. There's a lot of the courses are actually available in those links. Okay, we're going to get back to some practical, Sue. I think we've got our next mindfulness exercise. So I will leave that to you and participate like everyone else.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So folks, many of you who have done some mindfulness practice have been told many times to observe your breath. What we found in our neurodiverse research, I remember one of the very first participants in one of our autistic adult groups said to me, if somebody tells me to pay attention to my breath, I actually feel like they're asking me to place a noose around my neck. Okay. And I was like, okie dokie. So we've got to create options. Some people feel panic and stress when they're asked to pay attention to their breathing. So we're going to do just 3 breaths right now. However, I'm going to give you multiple ways to do that. The reason we call it just 3 breaths, when we modified our mindfulness techniques for caregivers, we introduced this concept of just 3 breaths. So it's not, you must sit down for a full hour. Okay, so let's do a practice right now. Now, what I'm going to do before we start, I'm going to show you 3 different ways of doing it. Okay, the first way is going to be by using sound. So if you are hard of hearing or deaf, this will not be a good practice for you. But if you are in the hearing world, this might be an option. The second option that we're going to use is direct physical sensation. So just feeling the sensations of your breathing in your body. And the third will be with imagery. Please know, not all 3 techniques might not work for you. So just choose the one that's best for you. Okay? Modify it, make it accessible for you. So let's start off. Please get into a position in which you can bring your full attention. If we're slouched, we're not really going to pay as close attention, right? So just bring the body to a position in which you can really concentrate, bring attention to the here and now. So I invite you to close your eyes if you have them open, and if it's available to you to close your eyes, if it's comfortable. For all these techniques, you can just look down at one object also. What I want you to do now is deepen your breath and breathe so loud that you can hear it. Okay, so you can have your mouth closed, but just breathe so loud you can hear your breathing. Now what I want you to do is take 3 breaths like that, but smooth. Okay, so allow the belly to expand out. Breathe in deeply, pay full attention, and see if you can even notice that your breathing might even sound like the ocean flowing in and out. Try that. 3 breaths, focusing on the sound of your breathing. Very good. You may have noticed the mind may have wandered or maybe not. Second option, please place 1 hand on your chest, 1 hand on your belly. We also know from research we get positive endorphins when we place a loving hand on the body like that. Now I want you to breathe in, see if you can feel the belly expanding out. And when you breathe out, relax the body. Breathing in again, feeling those direct concrete sensations of the body expanding. Breathing out, befriend gravity. It's getting heavier, more relaxed. Third sensory option is using imagery. So keeping the eyes closed if that's comfortable. I invite you to imagine that a beautiful healing ocean tide flows in the body, bringing what you need. It might be calm. So as you breathe in, just quietly saying to yourself, I am calm and relaxed. Breathing out, I am calm and relaxed, and feeling the body, letting go of whatever you need to let go of. Putting down any thoughts, any worries, any concerns, just letting them go, almost as though the ocean brings in what you need, takes out what you don't need. Try that right now for just 3 breaths. Relaxing the body on the out breath. Very good. So there's 3 different ways of doing just 3 breaths. And then there's a slide that we can go right to if you want with the vagus nerve on it. So, and I can jump right into that if you want. So, you know, what we always say in our groups is it's not what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It's Vegas is actually Latin for wandering. Vagus nerve, and that with this image here, the vagus nerve is up, connects with the brainstem and wanders all the way down until it rolls around the belly. So right now, as you're listening, please place a hand on your belly and breathe in. See how much you can expand out that belly. Nobody's looking. We can't see your belly right now. Just let it go. And then when you breathe out, it relaxes back down. Okay, that's vagus nerve stimulation. You're sending signals to the brain, stimulating a relaxation response. And one of the videos that we have that you can check out in our resources is straw breathing, where you actually breathe out through a straw to help stimulate that even more to get those positive endorphins. So for the rest of this presentation, see if you can try that. Just keep breathing in, letting the belly really expand out. There you go, Matt. A little bit of vagus nerve
Try
stuff.
not to have it seen in the in the camera there. It's interesting. I've never heard the science behind it, but clearly, heard the techniques, but never the science behind it. I'll let everyone know that we got about 13 minutes left. It's looking now like we're going to go a little bit over our scheduled time, which is okay, but I know some of you all have to go, which means that if you do, this will be recorded. It will be archived. It also means that I'm not going to be able to get to as many of your questions as I might have hoped. So we're going to look to get you guys some answers afterwards. But before I move on, there's one question that's jumped out to me that I do want to ask Sue, because I think that it's getting to the core of what some of these audience members are looking for, and that is, do you feel that you can use mindfulness for low functioning, developmentally delayed adults on the spectrum?
So that was one of the very first questions. I remember when we were very first doing our research, there was somebody out in the UK who contacted me and said, "This is great. You guys are doing this. What about for people?" I like the term high support needs, but people with really high support needs. And of course, one of the things, and Lee speaks so beautifully to this, one of the big things we know is the more that we can have the whole support circle around the person engaging in mindfulness. So the more the staff and the support people are practicing, the more it's going to benefit that person. There are sensory practices that we can do. There's unfortunately not a lot of research with this particular group, but there's sense practices. And I mean, I think a lot of you remember the snoozling rooms and other sort of practices around helping calm the senses, sound. There's somebody that I've been doing one-on-one sessions with who doesn't use words to communicate. So we've really had to modify and create the sound of the ocean, things like that, right? Weighted blankets, using concrete practices. And that particular person loves scents. So they have a few different scent bottles, like lavender, orange, they really like. And they have a little lavender bag that they put over their eyes so they lie down. So helping find some relaxation tools that are going to work for that person. It's got to be individualized.
Okay. Sorry, I don't want to derail this whole presentation, but again, getting people answers. So I thought you were going to go that way. And there was another question about, within the community, within the autistic community, and when you're doing group sessions, often, you bet one autistic person, you do need that individualization, which group you can't do that in group, correct? Or am I wrong in that assertion?
You're 100% right. And actually, with all of our autistic groups, everybody who participates in the group has one-on-one sessions with me also. So at the very beginning of the group, we put out that we don't want to henpeck people, because some people will be like, I don't want to talk to the group leader, So we always put it out there. Reach out if you want a one-on-one session. We'll help modify and make this even more individualized for you. That's where we come up with some of these very individualized practices, like the 3 S's came out of that. That was working with someone. Yeah.
All right, great. So Sue and Lee are both very accessible, everyone. So I did my best to try and get some of those answered, but I feel like those might need a little more detailed kind of reach out one-on-one, which everyone here is open to doing. Lee, I'm going to go to this. Something we've been talking a lot about, is just the need for everyone to be healthy during COVID, not just wearing masks and the like. But talk to me about the importance of compassion for caregivers during this trying time.
Oh, thanks, Matt. For me, I found that I was already quite anxious before COVID, but my anxiety really increased. As I said earlier, just trying to support my loved one, but also, with everything constantly changing. And I just really found that mindfulness helps me bring compassion for myself. When I'm quiet and sort of separate and just have those 3 breaths, or just make it, quiet for myself, I can get in touch with how I'm feeling inside. And then I can bring a certain just tenderness maybe towards myself. Like, Lee, this is hard right now. Rather than just jumping into like the next thing I ought to say or do, but just to be quiet and feel where maybe I'm holding the tension in my shoulders, or I hold it in my throat, I hold it in my tummy, I hold it in my shoulders, and being quiet with mindfulness. Not that I'm trying to empty my thoughts at all. So I think that's one of those mistakes that people think that mindfulness is about, getting rid of thoughts and getting to some place where we're not thinking. It's actually for me to befriend my and bring compassion to where I'm at in this moment. So I think I think that's why, mindfulness is so important and healing for caregivers, because, as I said earlier, I was often in the future or in the past, or maybe even on autopilot, where I wasn't even noticing at all. I was just doing the next thing. So this idea of being quiet and bringing my full attention to this moment without judgment of myself, to bring compassion to myself, that is really, really helpful for me. And I can't give away what I don't have, Matt. So if I don't bring that compassion to myself, and I'm hard on myself, and I'm kind of brittle and thinking, I just got to grit myself through this difficult time, then I can't help but give that just comes out of me. But when I'm doing mindfulness and I quiet myself and I separate that these are thoughts, not facts, that I've been through other difficult times, I will get through this time, and also, where am I feeling tension, breathing into that tension, just gentleness, compassion for myself, then I have that much more to give.
Well, if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself before, when the plane's going down, you're not going to be able to help your children who are sitting next to you, who you love. When I learned to read and saw that for the first time on a plane, I didn't fully get it. But now that I'm a parent, I most certainly do. So on the topic of study, of research, and the study, Sue, can you speak a little bit to this?
Yeah. So Nirbai Singh, great guy, one of the first researchers out there to really dive into autism and mindfulness. And we reached out and connected with him. Yona Lunsky did it first, and then I've met him a number of times around the beginning of our research. We took a look at this research study. So I'm going to really, abbreviate it for you. You don't have to look at the slide. So here it is. Big takeaway is when staff practice mindfulness, it improves the well-being and shows changes in the behavior of autistic adults. So this research study was done over a 12-week period. Staff were trained in mindfulness. They collected data on the verbal redirections, the medications, staff injuries. These were group homes. There was 4 group homes that participated. They happened to be group homes where there was a lot of really challenging behaviors. And so they collect all this data. By the end of the 12-week period of staff alone doing the mindfulness, not the residents of the group home, restraints were not used at all. So they really noticed a massive difference in the behaviors of the people when staff were practicing mindfulness. That is a huge, huge and amazing thing for all of us to remember as caregivers, that we influence. Stress is contagious, right? We influence the people around us. Yeah.
Is that the first such study with caregivers? Or I would imagine.
Well, so Yeah. This was the first one, that was done with staff in particular, and then Elizabeth Dykins. There's another researcher. There was more that was brought forward. So that research, and what we're lucky, our research is also contributing to that at the Israeli Center. So there's lots more that's out there now, but that one's kind of the flagship, like the first one that really showed. Shall I speak about neurodiverse sensory stuff? Like, I don't need to spend too much time on this one, but we covered it a little bit in doing the 3 S's, just really being aware that similar to trauma, and there's more research that's being done on trauma now, similar to trauma in mindfulness, sense, if you ask an autistic person to focus on a sense that's going to be really uncomfortable for them, it can be a massive trigger and can backfire. So we've got to be really careful about how we use mindfulness practices with people who might have some sort of aversion to different sensory experiences. That's really, I think, all we need to say on that one. Lee, here's one of our favorites. I love this.
Right, because I really love it too, Sue, because, when I was first learning about mindfulness, I was like, how can I incorporate this into my daily life? And Sue explained, like, we can do this in everyday ways. So you see these pictures. So I just, really noticing like the smell of soap when I'm washing the dishes and the warmth of the water or that first sip of coffee, or when I go for a walk. Like, instead of like thinking, what am I going to do next? Really be present in that moment. The crunching of leaves now under our feet, and the sky, or when I go for a walk now, I intentionally look for something I haven't seen before, or hear a bird song, or whatever it may be, bringing my full attention to this moment. And we can do that in these various ways. When I'm preparing a meal, I really think about now, when I'm say peeling the carrots, about the farmer, the orangeness of that carrot, the sunlight, all of those things, even if it's just for a few moments, bringing my full attention to this moment is practicing mindfulness. So I think that's really encouraging for all of us. When you say, I don't know how to do mindfulness, or I'm not doing it right, or I'm not spending it, just try bringing your full attention to the moment that you're actually in. And, that in itself is so, for me, I can almost feel my whole body going, whew, because I'm in this moment, not in, reeling around like monkeys in a barrel the way my brain usually does.
And it's a thing that you said, when am I supposed to do it? But the other thing is, I don't have time, right? It's like the beauty when you start doing something like CBT for the first time and recognize that it's an all the time thing. It's interesting that we don't, we hear mindfulness and we think that we need to be on a yoga mat for an hour and, losing, and some of us are like, when am I going to do that? You know what I mean? Like I got the kids and I got the emails and all of that. So it's interesting. And even more interesting is when I was looking through this stuff is this idea of 10 seconds every hour. It sounds like Lee might be doing it a bit more than that, but Sue, what do you mean when you say this?
So I'm so glad that we have this slide right after Lee's talk. Now, Richard Davidson, I tell everybody, is my celebrity crush because he really is. He is a neuroscientist, and he conducted this research. So there you see a Tibetan monk who's being, hooked up. They're looking at what happens to the brain on meditation. And they found just such incredible stuff. We could talk about this research study that he launched, and it's gone forward in the realms of neuroscience to really show the power of mindfulness. Now, here's a little thing to know. When Richard Davidson, we could say so much about this. Reach out and we'll talk to you about it another point if you want to know more about this research. We have more handouts that we could even overwhelm you with if you want about our interpretation of this research. But here's the cool thing. During this research study, while they were taking a look at what happened to the brain on meditation, the big finding was the prefrontal cortex and the self-regulation parts of the brain respond beautifully, right? But while they were doing this, one of the lab assistants said, Look at the power. Look at what we're discovering with the brain on meditation. Can you imagine if every human being were able to simply do this for 10 seconds every hour? Think of how manageable that would be and how the world would change. 10 seconds every hour. So when Lee's talking about washing the hands, smelling the soap, hearing the crunch of the leaves, Lee's not just being a flake. Lee is rewiring her brain, because while we bring the attention to the present moment through sense awareness, we are actually participating in neuroplasticity, which doesn't happen over just like one magic moment. It happens all the time, folks. Right now, you can rewire your brain for wellness through concentrating on those sense anchors, like Lee said. So 10 seconds every hour. Even if you can't, like Matt said, you can't pull out the yoga mat for an hour, just try rewiring through sense awareness. Yeah. Okay, let's do a couple. It's so cool, Matt. Like, we could talk. I know we're going over, but we could talk about this for hours and hours.
You know what? I think what we're learning, Sue, if nothing else, is that this is the, you know, that image everyone uses in their PowerPoint with the top of the iceberg and the bottom of the iceberg.
Yes.
Like, I think that's, you know, we're showing 100%. That in real life. But let's get concrete examples of what our people come here for. And I'm sure.
Okay.
Let's jump into that.
So here's a good one. And guess what? The thing that we're about to do right now. So can everybody just put your hand up in the air? Just, you know, put your hand up, or wherever's comfortable for you, you know, just get the hand up there. What I want you to do is a meditation exercise, which is going to engage 2 sense anchors that release positive endorphins. Okay. So one of them is touch. Okay, so I want you to just take the finger. Sorry, I'm trying to right, left. Maybe Matt and Lee can demonstrate. So I want you to take the finger and trace it up thumb, down the thumb, up the finger, down the finger. Okay, all the way across all 5 fingers. Okay, so if everybody can try that, and you can do it wherever you want. Like, you can just have it relaxed in your lap. It doesn't matter where you're holding your hand. So folks, this is something you can do during those challenging conversations with your coworkers, your loved one, whatever. Just be doing this. Now, here's the mindfulness magic to add to it. Now, what I'd like you to do is incorporate your breathing. So remember that other vagus nerve, bang for the buck. Remember, allow the belly to expand out like a balloon. I want you to breathe in, going up. Breathe out, going down. And remember, when you breathe out, just let all the tension go. Just relax your forehead, your jaw, your shoulders. Breathing in, going up. Breathing out, just let it all go and really relax. Going up, breathing in, going down, breathing out. Very good. Okay, so there's one. And we're going to move through these. It's already 1:04, folks. Figure 8 breath. Point your finger at me. When we do this with our, in our groups, everybody has fun pointing. It's like, wait a minute, isn't it rude to point? But anyway, we're pointing. So draw a figure 8 in the air. Okay, draw that figure 8 in the air. Very good. Now, the other thing that adds, research shows that it helps, put your eyes, if you're sighted, look at your finger while you're doing it, okay? So watch your finger. Now add your mindfulness magic and breathe in for one loop, out for the other loop. In for one loop, out for the other loop. Very good. Okay, we've got videos of all of these practices too. You can go to the video links. Lotus breathing, just going to show you for 2 seconds. Open your hand and close your hand. So your hand becomes that beautiful lotus flower, opening in the day, closing at night. Breathe in when you open it, almost imagining that your breath is activating the movement. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. It's as simple as that. Breathe out. So there's tools you can take with you, very practical stuff you can do anytime.
Okay. Well, with that, guys, we've gone 5 minutes over, so I think we are going to look to wrap it up. We have a tremendous amount of resources that are available to the audience. They're listed out in these slides, but also available when you do the downloads in the handouts. The whole slide deck is there. So all of the resources are there. I should never have the last word in these. You should. So if I could just go first to Lee and then to Sue and just have your final thoughts before we close things out for the day. Lee, go ahead.
Well, I think you said it so well, Matt, that people think of mindfulness and caregivers might think, how on earth am I going to incorporate this into my life? And so I'm so grateful that Sue and I together created some mindfulness podcasts just for caregivers. And Sue leads us through some mindfulness exercises, but I also talk from my perspective as a caregiver. And there's opportunities also for you just to dig deeper into this. Thanks for all those resources. But just for a caregiver, you could maybe say to yourself, how does just breathing help me to be a better caregiver? How does just learning about doing, mindfulness practices, how am I going to incorporate that into my life? And all I can say is just from personal experience, this is something I have been able to do. I do notice a difference. I was really scared before even I came on this podcast. I was having tech difficulties. I was and I went, Lee, you've got tools in your toolkit now. Just breathe. Bring your attention back to this moment. You're okay. You're okay in this moment. I just befriended myself. So I use it all the time. And it has given me a much richer life because I'm not always in the future or the past. I can bring my full attention and compassion to myself in this moment and really notice in this moment what there is so much still to be grateful for, even when I'm feeling stressed.
And it wasn't so bad, this webinar, was it?
No, I was scared about I was scared about the tech issues, not you, Matt.
There we go. All right, Sue, I guess you get the final word.
All I want to say is, for those of you, if you're caregivers, if you're autistic adults, or if you're an autistic kid who's there with your parents watching, or if you're helping professionals, check out some of the resources we have. I really try and put all the CAMH stuff that we're doing on my Sue Hutton mindfulness webpage, and there's links. We want to keep making mindfulness more and more accessible for everyone in the autism and neurodevelopmental community. So just check out the resources, and we've got lots of groups coming up, free groups that are available. So connect with us, and we'd love to work with you and do some mindfulness with you.
Excellent. So with that, I will wrap things up. We've mentioned it ad nauseum, but please go to the handouts before you go and grab some of this stuff. Both our speakers are available to answer questions that I was not able to get to today. And as I mentioned, I do believe that this was the tip of the iceberg, and I'm sure we'll be seeing both these ladies back on the Autism Ontario webinar desk at some point in the near future. A reminder to everyone, this webinar will be recorded and available on this link and on the Autism Ontario website by tomorrow. If you know a loved one, another caregiver, anyone in the community who you think would benefit from this, because I don't think this was just about those on the spectrum. I think that mindfulness is one of those topics that translates across all aspects of life. Let them know about this webinar. Have them sign up and come and watch the recording. The more people that we get through this program, the more webinars we're able to put on for you. And with that, I want to thank our guests. I want to thank Autism Ontario, and I want to thank all of you for participating. And we'll see you again soon at our next Autism Ontario event.